for the player controller, I have exposed, there's a lot of options here. This is the script that randomizes the sprite for the character, but up here, the controller, there's a lot of stuff that's open, I guess, to be changed. These aren't exactly public. A lot of them are serialized fields, but uh, there's also a lot of methods in here. Like anything that has this yarn command thing. If it has a yarn command, that means that I can actually run this command through the dialogue system. So if I want to make a character jump, I just type C jump, because jump is already a command, like a default command in yarn for the language, so you can't actually use that. But C jump for like character jump. I forget that a lot. But I have a whole bunch of methods down here that I can like interact with the character controllers outside of player input, which allows a lot of flexibility in moving them and directing them through the dialogue system, because it's not just the player that has this controller, this script. All of the actors, which I'm calling them, in the game, so that's this character, you know, Gabe, the first one you meet, or the raccoon, or the key. They all have this controller script, this base controller script. I wanted to implement something for like an input provider, so you could choose how the inputs are interpreted, if it's like an AI or a player, but this was supposed to be like a simple kind of project, so I didn't want to work too much into that. And just having a simple checkbox for checking player inputs in the update loop works well enough for me. There's a lot of stuff in this script. But yeah, so this is basically if player move. If the player is allowed to apply inputs to this character, then we just check all the inputs. Otherwise, it's like an AI, and we can control it otherwise. Unless can move is false. So there's two different ones. There's player move and can move. Can move basically just disables all of the movement, I think, in the move character method here. Yeah. If you can move, then just, I'm using a character controller, Unity's character controller, which I should probably talk about as being not exactly 2D, but, you know, if we have the moving option turned off, then we don't move the player. Right now, I think this is mostly just used when you pick up a player or pick up an actor, so that they're just parented above you and stick with you the whole time, basically. But yeah, this, I started off, wow, this crashed too. That's great. Okay. And we're back. Okay. So this did start off as just a 2D project. But then when I was setting stuff up, I decided to I'll just like use the Unity's character controller, because it's simple enough. It detects collisions. You can apply movement inputs, right? Then I quickly learned that character controller only works for 3D. There's not a 2D equivalent. So then instead of writing my own character controller with rigid body and all that stuff, I was just like, yeah, whatever. I'll just make the game 3D. So it's just basically an orthographic camera, but all of the environment stuff is actually 3D. So like there's 3D collision boxes, which I'll be honest, probably not the most performant thing. I don't think these have back faces at least. No, they do. I need to change that. Basically, these are all Pro Builder meshes with a texture from a sprite sheet. You know, so let me select this. So I just have a bunch of materials currently. That's why only some of these areas are textured and some of them are just colorless cubes, because I didn't want to put in the effort of doing this all, because there's probably a better way to do it. As you can see, these are like individual meshes. But, and I think they have a mesh collider. I should probably just make it a box collider, because then I could delete some side faces that you don't even see, and then, but that's optimization for later. But yeah, the players, the actors, interestingly enough, because of sorting stuff, I decided to just move them forward in Z space. So that, like, here, let me select this area, make this the starting zone, and I'll split this. Basically, when the player runs into a wall, if I had them just on the same plane as everything else, depending on the sprite, they would like go through the wall. So let me just change this really quick. Oh, zoomed out. And if I just take my art and I hit 0, you can see that they look like they're kind of behind the wall. Whereas if I just move them a little bit forward, oh, now they're in front of the wall. That looks good. So there's stuff like that. That's my sorting system, is just Z distance. So there's a lot of stuff that's just sort of, it's been perfectly fine working like this. Even though it's technically supposed to be a 2D game, I can work just fine in like this 2D view and make everything work how I want it to. And then just every now and again check the 3D stuff when something doesn't work. For like the 10th time when my character controller decides to stop working or provide some new problem, but I think I've mostly got that figured out, thankfully. Oh, I have, you know, triggers also, obviously, just simple triggers. I have triggers for both NPCs and players. I have layers set up for different stuff. So like there's NPC trigger, there's interact for players, NPC layers, no collisions. Well, a couple different things. So like for this one here with the key man, you know, he runs away from you and then he comes into this room and then he hits this trigger, and this trigger basically just closes this door here. So, you know, just a really simple way of triggering events, even in these cutscenes and stuff like that. But then if the player later comes into this room and he walks in here, then, you know, nothing's going to happen because this is only triggering when an NPC goes in. And the only NPC that should be in this room should be the key man. So it shouldn't trigger with anybody else. And then there's going to be something here or whatever. But yeah, eventually there's going to be a same here, key man. But just an NPC trigger. So I threw the raccoon up there and it triggered, so I might want to figure a way to change that. But